They thought they had just signed the contract, finalizing the deletion of their useless daughter, a clean break. They had no idea that in just a few hours, my name was going to be read aloud. Not just my name, but my name attached to a number that, in their wildest dreams, they had never even come close to touching. My name is Freya Simmons. The air in Auberge Laurent is thick with the sound of money. It is not a loud sound. It is the opposite. It is the suppressed hush of people who do not need to raise their voices, the velvet quiet that costs a fortune to maintain. You hear the chime of heavy, real silver against porcelain, the whisper-thin ring of crystal glasses, and the educated murmur of conversations about portfolios, acquisitions, and the upcoming regatta. The tablecloths are starched to a geological stiffness, white and unforgiving. The light is dim, golden, precisely engineered to make diamonds sparkle and complexions look flawless. And there, at the center table, the one that functions as a stage for the entire room, sits my family, the Simmonses. I am sitting opposite them. Thomas and Margot Simmons, my parents, beside them, my older sister, Sienna. This is, ostensibly, my graduation dinner. This is the night that is supposed to mark the culmination of 4 years of university. This should be the night they finally look at me with something resembling pride. But the atmosphere is not celebratory. It is contractual. It has the sterile, high-stakes tension of a boardroom just before a hostile takeover is finalized. My mother, Margot, flashes her press smile. It is a brilliant, toothy, perfectly formed expression she reserves for society photographers and major donors. It does not touch her eyes. Her eyes are busy calculating, assessing the room, ensuring we are the focal point. "Freya, darling," she says, her voice a smooth, practiced melody. She slides a thick, cream-colored envelope across the vast expanse of white linen. It is heavy, expensive paper. It stops just short of my bread plate. "Your graduation present." My stomach does not flutter. It does not fill with warmth. It clenches into a cold, hard knot. I have been here before. I learned long ago, probably around the age of 6, that in the Simmons household, gifts are not gifts. They are transactions. They are levers. They are conditional love clauses wrapped in expensive foil. Beside my father, Sienna subtly adjusts her smartphone. She props it against the base of the towering, architecturally arranged floral centerpiece. She thinks she is being sly, masking the movement with a toss of her perfect hair. But I see the camera lens. It is pointed directly at me. She is producing her next piece of content, hunting for the viral reaction shot. She is waiting for the drama. I look at the envelope. It feels heavier than paper has any right to be. "Well, go on," my father, Thomas, urges. His voice is crisp, impatient. It is the voice he uses when a quarterly report is not on his desk at the precise second he expects it. He is not looking at me. He is looking at the envelope, willing it to execute its function. I slide my fingernail under the heavy wax seal. It is embossed with the Simmons family crest. Naturally, an eagle strangling a serpent. Or maybe the serpent is strangling the eagle. I could never quite tell. The paper inside is not a card. It is a document. Several pages, stapled cleanly at the corner. The font is a severe, black serif, Times New Roman, the font of legal filings and bad news. My eyes drop to the title at the top of the first page. Declaration of Severance of All Familial Obligations. A Declaration of Familial Obligation Severance. My blood does not run cold. My heart does not pound. Everything just stops. My internal camera zooms in, capturing the details with a frigid, digital clarity. The thick, creamy stock, the sharp, laser-printed letters, and at the bottom of the final page, visible through the indentation, the raised, crimped seal of a notary public. It is dated 3 days ago. This was not an impulse. This was a scheduled item on their agenda. This was planned, drafted, reviewed by counsel, and executed with the same dispassionate efficiency as one of my father's financial restructurings. This is a disownment, delivered over seared scallops. We feel this is for the best, Freya, Thomas says, finally deigning to meet my gaze. His eyes are clear, untroubled, like the water in our filtered pool. He's explaining a diversification strategy. It provides a clean break for both parties. You are free to pursue your ambiguous ventures with computers and startups. He says computers as if it is a dirty word, a slightly shameful lower-class hobby. And we are free to protect the Simmons reputation from the inevitable fallout. The fallout? He means me. I am the fallout. Are you getting this? Sienna whispers, her voice a sibilant hiss aimed at her phone. She leans forward, her own smile sharp and hungry. She is practically vibrating, waiting for the explosion, the tears, the screaming, the satisfying collapse of her embarrassing younger sister. At least now it is official, she adds, a venomous little murmur just loud enough for the microphone to catch. At least you have paperwork confirming you are not our burden anymore. I do not cry. I do not scream. I will not give her the content. Instead, I scan the key clauses, the immediate termination of all financial support, the explicit waiving of any future claims to the family estate, the polite but legally binding request that I cease using the Simmons name in any professional capacity that might cause confusion or brand dilution. I am not a daughter. I am a brand dilution. Very slowly, very deliberately, I fold the document. I crease the thick paper once, horizontally, making the edges perfectly aligned. Then again, vertically. Then a third time, until it is a small, dense, harmless-looking square. I place the folded document neatly on the table, just to the left of my water glass. It rests beside the silver. I look up. I study their faces, one by one, like I am analyzing data points in a hostile network. Thomas, impatient, already mentally moving on. The transaction is complete. He glances at his Patek Philippe. Margot, that perfect plastic smile is now slightly strained. She is annoyed. I have failed to perform. My lack of a dramatic breakdown has ruined the pacing of her scene. Sienna, pouting, genuinely annoyed. Her phone screen has gone dark. I have failed to deliver the emotional payoff she craved. I am, as always, a disappointment. For a fleeting second, I am tempted. My hand hovers near my bag. I am tempted to reach inside, to pull out the thick, plain gray file folder that rests within it. The folder that contains my contract, the one that represents my severance. But I stop. My fingers just trace the outline of the folder through the leather. Not yet. This is just the overture. This is just the appetizer. The main performance is scheduled for tomorrow, at the graduation ceremony. I pick up my water glass. The crystal is heavy and cold, beaded with condensation. I take a slow, measured sip. The manufactured silence of the restaurant rushes in to fill the vacuum at our table. It stretches, pulled taut as a piano wire. They are all watching me, waiting. I have broken their script. I lower the glass. I place it back on the coaster without a sound. I look directly at my mother, then my father. I let my voice come out perfectly level, perfectly calm, with a chilling, flat-line equanimity that I know, from experience, unnerves them more than any shout ever could. Thank you, Mother, Father, for the gift. I watch the impact. It is immediate. Margot's smile freezes, then fractures. Thomas's brow furrows. He was prepared for hysteria, for begging, for an emotional scene he could dominate. He was not prepared for this, not this cold, analytical acceptance. Even Sienna stops her performative pouting and looks at me, truly looks at me, with a flicker of sudden, unfamiliar uncertainty. I have become an unknown variable, and in their perfectly controlled world, there is nothing more terrifying than that. They thought they had just signed the contract, finalizing the deletion of their useless daughter, a clean break. They had no idea that in just a few hours, my name was going to be read aloud. Not just my name, but my name attached to a number that, in their wildest dreams, they had never even come close to touching. The house I grew up in was not a home. It was a statement, a perfectly curated, colonial-style mansion in North Crest Hills, the kind of place where money was old enough to be quiet, but insecure enough to be visible. The lawn was a chemically treated, impossibly green carpet, manicured to a millimeter of its life. The hedges were geometric marvels, cut with lasers. Probably, every window was lit, not for warmth, but for curb appeal, as my mother called it. It was a house designed to be photographed for magazines, not to be lived in. Inside, it was a museum of beige and cream, punctuated by important art. There was no clutter, ever. Clutter, in my father's mind, was a sign of a disorganized life, and a disorganized life was a sign of a failing portfolio. My father, Thomas Simmons, was a financial advisor to the city's business elite. He did not just manage their money, he managed their image, and he ran our family the same way. He was obsessed with order, not just neatness, but a systemic, rigid, top-down order. He had rules for the placement of shoes in the mudroom closet, color-coded by season. He had a schedule for which color tie should be worn to which type of event. And of course, he had a detailed, multi-decade career plan drafted for both his children before they could even read. My mother, Margot Simmons, was the Queen Regent of Riverton's charity circuit. Her face was a permanent fixture on the society pages, always smiling graciously, always clutching a glass of champagne, always chairing the next gala. She was the perfect mother, a role she played with professional dedication. Children were essential to this role, but not as people. We were props. We were living proof of her maternal success, her impeccable genetic line, her ability to manage a household as flawlessly as she managed a fundraiser. And then there was my sister, Sienna, 5 years older than me. Sienna was their masterpiece. She was the perfect product of their meticulous engineering. She went to the right prep school, excelled in debate, understood the complex art of posing for a photograph by the age of 8, and was now a rising star at a prestigious law firm. Her life was a pre-written press release, a series of curated achievements designed to be announced at cocktail parties. She was, in every way, the child they had ordered. And then there was me. From as early as I can remember, I was a glitch in their system. I was the data point that skewed the curve. While Sienna was practicing her cello, I was under the living room table with a screwdriver, taking apart the radio. While she was at her first cotillion, I was sorting through a box of discarded computer parts, trying to figure out why a printer had stopped working. These things horrified Margot, not because they were dangerous, but because they were unseemly. They were messy. They involved grease and wires and small, ugly components. They were, in her words, dirty, unattractive, and simply not photogenic. I remember one afternoon when I was 14, I had been riding my bike too fast down the steep hill of our driveway and I wiped out, skidding across the gravel. It was a bad fall. My knee was a raw, bloody mess, gravel embedded in the skin. I limped into the house, crying, trailing drops of blood on the pristine Italian marble of the foyer. Margot was in the hallway, directing a photographer who was setting up for our annual family Christmas card photo. She turned, saw me, and her face tightened. She did not rush over. She did not ask if I was okay. She did not even see the pain. She saw the blood. She looked at my leg, then at the floor, then at the white, floor-length dress she had laid out for me on the stairs. "Freya, for heaven's sake," she hissed, her voice a furious whisper. "Look at this mess. You have gotten blood on the runner, and that dress is silk. How could you be so thoughtless?" She did not touch me. She called for Maria, our housekeeper, to handle this and clean up the girl. Then she turned back to the mirror in the foyer, smoothed her own hair, and said to the photographer, "We will just need a few moments, a slight wardrobe issue." My father was no different, just less emotional. He never yelled. Yelling was chaotic, inefficient. Instead, he would schedule discussions with me at the dinner table, as if I were a junior analyst who was underperforming. Every B+ on my report card was not a sign of a difficult subject. It was data indicating a trend toward laziness. My fascination with programming was not a passion. It was an image risk. No one respects a tinkerer. Freya, he would explain calmly, cutting his filet mignon into precise, identical cubes. It is blue-collar work dressed up as a hobby. The real value is in managing the people who do the tinkering, not in doing it yourself. It is a reputational liability. When they introduced us to their friends, the script was always the same. "This is our Sienna, of course," Margot would beam, draping a proud hand on Sienna's shoulder. "She is a rising star at her law firm. We are so proud." Then, a brief, dismissive glance in my direction. "And this is Freya." A small, tight smile. "She is our quiet one, very technical. She likes machines." She would give a little, helpless laugh. "We are still not quite sure what she is going to do with her life." It was in those moments that I realized the truth. I was not hated. I was not abused. I was, in some ways, worse. I was irrelevant. I was the inconvenient second child, the one who did not fit the narrative. I was an error in their otherwise perfect spreadsheet. I saw it in the family photos that lined the grand staircase. Dozens of pictures of Thomas at benefits, Margot cutting ribbons, Sienna winning trophies. I was there, of course. They were too obsessed with image to exclude me entirely, but I was always on the edge, slightly out of focus. My smile never quite right, the invisible one, blending into the expensive wallpaper. I was ignored at parties, overlooked in conversations. My accomplishments, when I had them, met with a polite, vacant nod, before the topic immediately shifted back to Sienna's latest clerkship. So I learned to be quiet. I learned to watch. My family mistook my silence for submission. They thought it was the resigned, sullen quiet of a child who knew she was a disappointment. They were wrong. It was the quiet of an analyst. It was the silence of a system administrator monitoring network traffic. I was not sulking. I was observing. I was gathering data. I memorized their patterns, their behaviors. The way their smiles were precisely calibrated for different audiences. I logged every superficial conversation, every backhanded compliment, every calculated move to maintain their perfect public facade. I saw them not as parents, but as a complex, deeply flawed system, full of security holes and predictable algorithms. They thought they were raising a failure. They had no idea they were training a database administrator. That perfect, sterile, emotionally bankrupt house did not break me. It did not crush my spirit. It simply pushed me in a different direction. It forced me to find love in other places. I found it in the clean, cold, predictable beauty of a system. I found it in the absolute, objective truth of a line of code. I fell in love with data, with algorithms, and with complex networks. Because unlike people, a system, at its core, cannot lie. It either works or it does not. And I was going to build one that worked. High school was a different kind of museum, a museum of social hierarchies and performative teenage identities. But I found a loophole. Tucked away at the end of the D wing, past the chemistry labs, was the school's old computer lab, room D12. It was a forgotten space. The carpet was a depressing shade of mottled gray. The machines were a decade old, and it smelled faintly of dust and overheated plastic. But it was a sanctuary. It was the only room in the entire school, and perhaps the entire city of Riverton, where nobody cared who my parents were. It was the only place I was not the other Simmons girl. Here, I was just me. I taught myself to write code by reverse engineering the school's rudimentary scheduling software. I tore apart the old desktops and rebuilt them, learning the architecture from the inside out. I explored the school's internal network, not to cause trouble, but just to see how it was built, to map its pathways and find its weak points. It was the first system I truly understood. The lab was overseen by a man named Mr. Ramsey. He was an older teacher, nearing retirement, with coffee-stained ties and a genuine, unironic love for early-generation microprocessors. He was the first adult in my life who saw what I was doing and did not recoil. One afternoon, he found me running a diagnostic on the main server. "You know, Freya," he said, peering over his glasses at my screen. Most kids are on here playing games. You are in here running scripts. I was just checking the packet flow, I muttered, expecting the inevitable lecture. He just chuckled. What you are doing, this isn't just playing, as your family might call it. He had never met them, but he was perceptive. This is a skill set. This is the architecture of the future. The people who can build and break these systems are going to change entire industries. Do not let anyone tell you it is a toy. He validated me. He gave a name to what I did. It was not tinkering. It was architecture. His words gave me an idea. I started small. A classmate's laptop was riddled with viruses. I cleaned it in an hour. He was grateful and offered me $20. It felt electric. Money that I had earned. Money that had no strings. No expectations. No Simmons family letterhead attached. I started a quiet side business. The parents at my affluent high school had plenty of money but zero technical literacy. I became their ghost in the machine. I set up their home networks. I recovered their lost family photos. I debugged their custom-built, overpriced home office setups. I was fast, I was discreet, and I was good. I charged a flat rate. The money, all cash, went into an old shoebox under my bed. It was not a lot, not by Simmons standards, but it was mine. It was a separate ledger, completely disconnected from my family's balance sheet. Inevitably, the firewall between my two worlds breached. It happened at a Thursday night dinner. Dinner was mandatory, 7 p.m. sharp, no phones at the table, just perfectly portioned food and curated conversation. I ran into Cynthia Clark at the club today, Margot announced, dabbing her lips with a linen napkin. A bit. Flustered, as usual. She is always flustered, Thomas said, not looking up from his plate. Well, yes, Margot continued. But she said something rather odd. She said our Freya came over and fixed their internet? She was raving about you. Said you were under a desk for an hour. A cold silence dropped onto the table. My father's knife and fork paused mid-air. Sienna, naturally, smirked into her water glass. Freya? Thomas said. His voice was dangerously calm. You went to the Clark's house as technical support? I was helping Mrs. Clark with her router configuration, I said, keeping my voice flat. Thomas placed his silverware down, perfectly aligned on either side of his plate. I see. And did she pay you for this service? Yes. He let out a short, sharp sigh. It was not anger. It was disappointment. The kind you show a stock that just missed its earnings projection. Freya, we do not need the petty cash. We are not a family that needs to repair its neighbor's electronics for pocket money. It is not about the money, I said quietly. Then what is it about? He demanded. It is an embarrassment. It makes us look small. Do you understand the message it sends when a daughter of Thomas Simmons is crawling around on the floor like a common technician? It is a brand issue. Sienna decided it was her time to shine. Oh, Dad, it is worse than that, she chimed in, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. Cynthia apparently told everyone at the tennis luncheon. She said, and I quote, she put on a high, nasal voice, "Can you believe it? A Simmons girl, sitting under a server rack. It was just hilarious. So, Manuel." She laughed. Manuel, that is what she called you, Freya, like you were the hired help, which I guess you were. I looked down at my plate. The food had lost its taste. I felt the familiar, cold click in my brain, the sound of a data entry being logged. Entry. Family judges all work by its appearance, not by its intrinsic value. Status is the only metric. Utility is irrelevant. I said nothing. I just ate my food. My silence was, as always, their biggest irritant. The real turning point came a year later. I found a flyer for a statewide cybersecurity competition. It was not a school-sanctioned event. It was run by a consortium of tech companies. The challenge was to defend a simulated network from a team of professional red team hackers. I entered. I did not tell anyone. I spent weeks in my room, not just doing homework, but studying network topology, encryption standards, and common attack vectors. I used the money from my shoebox to buy a few old servers to build my own practice network. I made it through the qualifiers, then the quarterfinals, then, suddenly, I was in the finals, one of 5, the only one from my city, the only girl. They sent a formal invitation for the final round, which was a live, 8-hour event. It included 2 guest tickets. I made the mistake of bringing the invitation to the dinner table. I am in the finals for a cybersecurity competition, I said, placing the invitation near my father's plate. It is this Saturday. You are invited to watch. Thomas glanced at the paper, his eyes scanning it for names he recognized. He found none. Saturday? He said, frowning. Freya, Saturday is the fundraiser at the gallery. You know I have a VIP meeting with the board. It is critical. I cannot possibly miss it. He pushed the invitation back. And I, Margot added, without even looking at it, am chairing the benefit silent auction the entire afternoon. It is for a very important cause, darling. I looked at Sienna. She just laughed. A short barking sound. A cybersecurity competition? Is that what they call it? Good luck with your computer game, little sister. I went alone. I sat at my terminal for 8 straight hours. I fought off DDoS attacks. I patched SQL injections in real time. I identified and isolated a rootkit that 2 of the other finalists missed entirely. I won. First place. They gave me a heavy glass trophy and a check for $5,000. I took the bus home, holding the trophy in my lap. The check was in my pocket. It felt heavier than the trophy. When I got to the house, the driveway was full of luxury cars. I walked in the front door and was hit by a wall of sound. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. My stomach sank. Margot swept past me in a glittering dress, holding a tray of champagne flutes. Oh, Freya, there you are, she said, not even looking at me or the object in my hand. Thank goodness, Sienna's article just came out in the Riverton Law Review. We are all so proud. Go get changed. You look a mess. The entire house was a party, a spontaneous, lavish celebration for Sienna. Her article, framed, was already hanging on the wall. I walked through the crowd. No one spoke to me. I went to the large, built-in shelving unit in the living room, the one that held all of Sienna's debate trophies, her equestrian ribbons, her certificates of excellence. I found an empty space on a low shelf, in the back, behind a large, leafy potted plant. I placed my glass trophy there. It was heavy. It made a solid thud on the wood. No one noticed. I went up to my room. I did not change. I sat in front of my monitors, the glow illuminating my face in the dark. The trophy was downstairs, already gathering dust, swallowed by the narrative of the perfect family. The check was on my desk. I looked at the check, $5,000, and I looked at my screen. For the first time, a new, cold, and incredibly clear thought formed in my mind. They would never see me. They would never see the trophy, or the skill, or the work. They were blind to it, because it did not fit their world. B-pluses were laziness. A side business was an embarrassment. A state championship was a computer game. I realized then that I could not win by their rules. I could not try to fit my achievements onto their shelf. I would be invisible forever. Unless I built something so big, so massive, so undeniably valuable that they could not ignore it. Something that did not need their approval. Something that did not fit on a shelf, but that changed the way the world itself was shelved. Something that operated in a language they understood, even if they could not speak it. The language of power, the language of money. I turned back to my computer. I opened a new search window. I deleted my old search history. I started typing. Logistics systems vulnerabilities, supply chain cyber attacks, economic impact of transportation infrastructure failure. I read about the massive, invisible networks that keep the country running, trucking, shipping, rail. I read about how a single, tiny data error, a malicious line of code, could halt billions of dollars of commerce in an instant. It was a system, A giant, complex, high-stakes system, and it was full of holes. I looked at the applications page for Northbridge Tech University. My parents wanted me to go into economics, law, something clean, as Margot would say, something with a respectable title for their dinner parties. I moved my mouse. I clicked on the application for the Department of Data Science and Systems Design. I was not going to build a career they could put in a frame. I was going to build a system they would be forced to look at. I got into Northbridge Tech University. I even managed to secure a partial scholarship, based on my academic record and the anomaly of my cybersecurity win. My parents were, of course, delighted, which is to say, they were relieved they could now tell people their difficult daughter was attending a respectable university, even if it was for a trade school subject like computers. Their delight, however, had its financial limits. Thomas sat me down for one of his reality discussions. "We will, of course, cover your tuition, Freya," he said, looking at a spreadsheet that detailed my college costs. Or rather, the portion not covered by your scholarship. This is the bare minimum required to maintain the family's image. "Thank you," I said. "However," he continued, holding up a hand, "we will not be subsidizing a lavish lifestyle, no expensive dormitory, no new, fancy laptop, no unnecessary luxuries. Your mother and I believe that if you are so insistent on this path, you should be willing to fund the extras yourself. It will build character." Extras apparently meant a safe place to live, a functioning computer, and food. The check they wrote covered tuition and nothing else. They gave me a bank card linked to a student account with a minimal, precisely calculated monthly allowance, just enough to ensure I could not claim they were letting me starve, but not enough to live on without feeling the pinch. It was not support. It was a leash, designed to remind me who held the purse strings. So, I found a different solution. I found a job. It was the only one that fit my class schedule and my need for uninterrupted blocks of coding time. I took the night shift, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 4 nights a week, at the Midnight Circuit. The Circuit was a 24/7 coffee shop wedged between a highway exit and the industrial part of town, not far from campus. It was an oasis of fluorescent light in a sea of dark warehouses. Its clientele was a rotating cast of long-haul truck drivers gassing up on caffeine, night shift factory workers, insomniac IT students like me, and the occasional weary-looking police officer. The air inside was a permanent miasma of stale, burnt coffee, industrial cleaning supplies, and the faint, sweet smell of day-old pastries. The Wi-Fi was slow, patchy, and unsecured, a fact that drove me insane on my first shift, until I fixed it myself on my break. The lighting was a sickly, flickering yellow that made everyone look tired and slightly ill. It was, in every conceivable way, the polar opposite of the Simmons mansion. It was loud, it was messy, it was real. It was the most freeing place I had ever been. Here, I was not Freya Simmons, I was just Freya, the girl who poured the coffee and did not ask stupid questions. My value here was simple, clean, and transactional. I poured a cup of coffee, they gave me money, I worked for 8 hours, the manager gave me a paycheck, there was no subtext, there was no hidden agenda. It was a perfect, self-contained system. After my shift ended at 6 in the morning, I would walk back to my apartment. It was not a dorm. I could not afford one. I lived in a tiny, cramped 2-bedroom apartment 3 miles from campus, split with 2 other roommates who were perpetually loud, perpetually messy, and had no concept of a night shift sleep schedule. I would enter my shared room, which I shared with a girl who was just getting up for her 8 a.m. sorority meeting. I would close the flimsy curtain that separated our beds, put in my noise-canceling headphones, and open my laptop. This was my second shift, from 7 a.m. until my first class at noon. I was not a barista, I was a systems architect, while my roommates argued over the hot water. I wrote algorithms for my risk analysis classes. I fueled myself with the burnt coffee I'd brought home from my shift, my fingers flying across the keyboard, my brain finally, truly, blissfully engaged. Then I would sleep for 3 hours in the afternoon, get up, go to my evening classes, and head to the circuit to do it all over again. My family, of course, had no concept of this. Margot called me on a rare video chat one afternoon. I had just woken up. My hair was a mess, and the dark circles under my eyes were probably visible even through the phone's low-quality camera. Her face appeared, perfectly framed, perfectly lit. She was in the pristine, sunlit sitting room of the mansion. "Freya, darling," she trilled, "I know you are so busy with your schoolwork." She said schoolwork with the same intonation she used for housework. "Hi, Mom. What is up?" "I am just trying to coordinate the family photo for your graduation," she said, her voice tight with importance. "I know it is a few months away, but I need to have the color palette approved by the photographer. Sienna is wearing pale blue. I have sent you 3 swatches for your graduation gown. I need you to tell me which one you have chosen so I can match the lining of your father's suit." I stared at her. I had just spent the last 48 hours straight, between work and the library, finishing a paper on cryptographic protocols that had earned me the top spot in my advanced systems design course. "Mom," I said, my voice rough from sleep, "I have not even looked at the gown options. I just finished a major project." She waved a dismissive, manicured hand. Yes, that is lovely, dear, but this is important. The light in May is very specific, and if we do not get the tones right, the entire shoot will look amateurish. Just pick a color. Freya, it is not that difficult." I looked at her perfect, smiling, utterly clueless face. "Blue," I said. "Whatever, I do not care." "Wonderful, see? That was easy." She was already looking past the camera, likely at her schedule. "Talk soon. Darling." The screen went black. I was on my own, and that was fine, because at Northbridge, I had found something new. I had found Dr. Elise Navarro. Dr. Navarro was a professor in the systems design department. She was a small, intense woman who wore the same thing every day: black pants, a black turtleneck, and severe, round glasses. She never smiled. She spoke in short, precise sentences, and she was, without question, the most brilliant mind I had ever met. She ran a small, invitation-only research group for her best students. I fought my way into it. Dr. Navarro, like Mr. Ramsey, was one of the few people who looked at me and did not see the Simmons name. She looked at my code, and my code, she said, was efficient, coming from her. Efficient was the highest possible praise. She was cold. She was demanding. She was brutally fair, and she became the first real mentor I ever had. It was this combination, Dr. Navarro's academic rigor and the circuit's gritty reality, that led to the breakthrough. I was at work. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. The cafe was quiet. Save for a table of 3 truckers in the back corner, they were regulars. Their names were Sal, Mick, and T-Bone. They ran cross-country, and they were complaining. "It is a damn joke," Sal was saying, crushing a sugar packet into his mug. "The 3rd time this month, I show up at the depot in Chicago, and the system is down. They lost my pickup order. Just gone. That is 2 days I am sitting idle. 2 days of money. Gone." "You think that is bad?" Mick grumbled. "My dispatch got hit last week. Some kind of hack. Wiped out half our manifests. We are running paper logs like it is 1985. And I am pretty sure someone sold our client list, 'cause all of a sudden our competitors are calling every customer we have." T-Bone just shook his head. "It is the small guys. It is always us, the big companies, the apex lines of the world. They got their own private security, their own fancy satellite tracking. But us? We are just using some off-the-shelf software that a kid could probably break. We are sitting ducks." I stood behind the counter, pretending to wipe it down. But I was listening. I was listening to everything. Dispatch hacks, lost manifests, data being sold, small businesses, sitting ducks. I thought about my risk analysis algorithms. I thought about Dr. Navarro's work on real-time anomaly detection. I thought about the massive, fragile, interconnected system of logistics that these men lived in every single day. A system that ran on data, data that was being stolen, corrupted, and lost, costing them their livelihood. The idea that hit me was not a gentle wave. It was a lightning strike, a clean, bright, powerful bolt of pure logic. What if they were not sitting ducks? What if there was a way to monitor all that data? The truck locations, the warehouse manifests, the dispatch orders, in real time? What if you could build a system that was not just a firewall, but an intelligent guard? A system that could analyze the flow of data and spot an anomaly, a lost order, a truck veering off route, a login from an unsecured location, the second it happened? A system built specifically for the little guys, like Sal and Mick and T-Bone, affordable, simple, and secure. I grabbed a napkin. I started sketching, not a drawing, a system map, data inputs, analysis nodes, alert triggers. When my shift ended, I did not go to sleep. I went to the library. I started writing the first lines of code for a project I secretly named Sentinel Route. My family remained completely oblivious. They were busy planning Sienna's engagement party, in their world. I was just Freya, the computer girl, still wasting her youth on meaningless, unphotogenic code. The final break came during a brief, mandatory trip home for spring break. Sienna was trying on dresses for her party. I was in the corner, on my laptop, trying to debug a critical piece of Sentinel Route's code. "Are you even listening to me?" Sienna snapped. "I asked if you thought this one made me look more sophisticated or playful." "It looks fine, Sienna." She huffed, turning to the mirror. "You are just jealous. You are hiding behind that stupid screen because you know you will never have this. You will just be some code monkey in a basement somewhere." She looked at my reflection in the mirror, her eyes full of genuine, pitying contempt. "You can play with your computers all you want, little sister," she said, her voice a low, cruel purr. "But do not forget, computers do not make bloodlines. You will never be one of us." That was it. That was the final data point I needed. I went back to campus the next day. I walked into the bank. I took every penny I had earned from the midnight circuit and every dollar left from my cybersecurity prize, and I opened a new account at a different bank, a bank my family did not use. Then I took the student account card my father had given me. I walked to an ATM. I withdrew the last of his monthly allowance, and then, with a deep, cleansing sense of relief, I walked back to my apartment, got online, and I closed the Simmons-funded account forever. I paid the rest of my tuition, my rent, and my food with my own money. It was hard. It was exhausting. But it was mine. I was, finally, financially and completely, off their books. 2 weeks later, I received an email. It was not from my family. It was from the National Infrastructure Security Innovation Award Committee. They were a very big deal. They gave prizes for real-world solutions that protected national infrastructure. I had submitted Sentinel Route, on a whim, egged on by Dr. Navarro. I never thought I would hear back. The email said I had been selected. I was a finalist, one of 3, the award ceremony, and the announcement of the winner would be held at a major industry conference, in a few weeks, right after my graduation. I closed my laptop. I did not tell anyone, except Dr. Navarro. She read the email, looked up at me over her glasses, and gave the smallest, barely perceptible nod. "Good," she said. "Your data was clean. It was logical they would select you." And for the first time, I felt something that was not just freedom, it was pride. The National Infrastructure Security Innovation Award was not held in a glamorous hotel ballroom. It was held in a vast, soulless convention center out by the airport, a place of gray carpets, buzzing fluorescent lights, and the stale smell of industrial-strength coffee. This was not a science fair. It was a Shark Tank. The floor was filled with projects, but they were not like mine. They were ventures. They had corporate sponsors, teams of MBA students in matching, branded polo shirts, and slick, expensive marketing, There were virtual reality simulations of port logistics. There were dancing robots demonstrating last-mile delivery solutions. There were holographic displays and thumping bass lines. And then there was Booth 27B, my booth. It was not a booth. It was a 6-foot folding table with a black polyester skirt. My display consisted of my 3-year-old laptop, which was running the core program, and a single 24-inch monitor I had bought with 2 weeks of coffee shop tips. That was it. No posters, no free pens, no branded polo shirt-wearing team, just me. On the monitor was the live running demo of Sentinel Route. It was not pretty. It was a map of the Midwest, overlaid with a spiderweb of trucking routes. Hundreds of tiny green dots, representing trucks, moved along the highways in real time, using simulated data. It looked boring. It looked simple. It was, I knew, the most unphotogenic project in the entire hall. The sharks, as I had started calling them, swam right past. Men, and they were almost all men, in crisp, identical dark suits and shiny shoes, moved in packs. They would drift toward the music, toward the flashing lights. They would spend 20 minutes cooing over the dancing robot. They would put on the VR goggles and say, "Wow!" They passed my table. Their eyes would skim over it. Their brains would register, "Nothing to see here," and they would move on. A few gave me a look of pity. The poor, lost student who had wandered into the wrong room. I was invisible, just as I had been my whole life. I was just Freya, the girl in the corner with her computer game. I stood there for 3 hours. My feet hurt. My throat was dry. I just kept the simulation running. I watched as my algorithm worked, as a green dot in Illinois suddenly turned red, a deviation from its manifest, and my system automatically flagged it, calculated the risk, and sent a theoretical alert. It was working. I did not care if they saw. I saw. Then, in the middle of the 4th hour, I noticed he was there. He had not arrived. He had simply materialized. He was standing about 10 feet away from the table, not engaging, not looking at me, just watching the screen. He was middle-aged, with the tired, fit look of someone who worked too much and probably ran. He was not wearing a suit. He wore a dark button-down shirt, no tie, and dark jeans. Simple, expensive-looking boots. He had no flashy lanyard, no obvious name tag. He was, in this room of performative peacocks, utterly invisible, just like me. He stood there, perfectly still, hands in his pockets. He did not talk. He did not ask for a pitch. He just watched the monitor. 1 minute passed. The noise of the convention center, the music, the pitches, the laughter, seemed to fade. 2 minutes, a new alert flashed. A warehouse in Ohio was logging a delivery, but the truck's geofence data showed it was still 12 miles away. My system flagged the mismatch in bright, unmissable red. 5 minutes. He had not moved. He had not looked at me. He was just reading the data feed I had running in a small window in the corner. 8 minutes. 10 minutes. Finally, he spoke. He did not look up from the screen. His voice was quiet, raspy. "How many concurrent data streams can you process before the latency on your anomaly detection exceeds 1 second?" I was so startled. It took me a moment to answer. This was not a question from a suit. This was a question from an engineer. "It is not about the number of streams," I said, my voice coming out stronger than I expected. "It is about the ingestion architecture. I am not querying a central database. Every node is a microservice, and the analysis is decentralized. Latency is static at 0.4 seconds, regardless of whether I'm tracking 1 truck or 10,000. He nodded once, slowly. He turned his head and looked at me for the first time. His eyes were gray and intensely sharp. "You are simulating the data." "Yes," I said. "It is a mix of publicly available freight data and a predictive algorithm, but the architecture is live." "A truck deviating from a route is simple," he said, dismissing my first alert. "A driver gets coffee. A driver hits a roadblock. That is noise, not a threat. How do you differentiate?" "I am not just tracking the route," I said. I turned my laptop to face him. I did not have a pitch deck. I had code. I am running a behavioral baseline. The system learns the driver's habits. It knows Sal stops for coffee at this exit every Tuesday. It knows he is authorized for a 30-minute break, so it does not flag that. But it flags a 2-minute stop in an unscheduled, high-risk industrial park. It is not just looking at the truck. It is looking at the driver's digital fingerprint. He leaned in, looking at my code. He was actually reading it. And the warehouse fraud? The Ohio alert? That is the core of it, I said, pointing. The industry standard is to secure the database, but the database is not the problem. The input is the problem. A warehouse manager can falsify a log. A driver can falsify a delivery time. Sentinel Root does not trust any single input. It cross-references the warehouse API, the truck's independent geofence data, the driver's manifest timestamp, and the customer's order. The fraud is never in one file. It is in the mismatch. My system just looks for the mismatch. He was silent again for a long time. He stared at the screen, then at my code. He looked, for a moment, like a man who had just seen a ghost. "You built this," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, on my own." "You are prioritizing reality over gimmicks." He looked around at the rest of the hall, at the dancing robots and VR goggles, with a look of profound, weary disgust. "Everyone here is trying to sell a dream. You built something that just works." He turned back to me, his focus absolute. "My name is Damian Cole." He said it simply, as if he was telling me his name was John. But my blood, which had been calm, suddenly went cold. I knew that name. Apex Line Logistics. The name the truckers at the circuit had spoken with a mix of awe and resentment. The largest, most powerful, most technologically advanced logistics and infrastructure corporation in the country. They were not just a trucking company. They were a data company that used trucks. They were the big company Sal and T-Bone had talked about, the one with the private security and the satellite tracking. Damian Cole was not just a CEO. He was, in the world of logistics, a king. And he was standing at my folding table. "You have built," he said, his voice very low, "a solution to a problem that my own teams, with a budget of $50 million, have been chasing for 18 months, and they have failed." I just stared at him. I could not find a single word. "Do you have a lawyer?" he asked, the question as abrupt as his first one. I blinked. The question was so absurd, so Simmons-esque. "A lawyer?" "Yes, a lawyer. Do you have one?" I thought of Sienna. I thought of my father. I thought of the world of contracts and clauses that they lived in, and I gave the only answer I had. "No," I said, and my voice was raw with an honesty I had not intended. My family is full of lawyers, but I do not trust any of them." A small, thin, utterly humorless smile touched the corner of Damian Cole's mouth. "Good," he said. "That is the smartest thing you could have said. Family lawyers are paid to protect the family, not you." He reached into the pocket of his jeans and pulled out a wallet. From it, he extracted a single business card. It was not cream-colored. It was not embossed. It was thick, gray, recycled cardstock, with a name and a number printed in a simple black font. Nothing else. He handed it to me. "I am in Riverton for 2 more days. I am at the main Apex Line campus. My assistant will clear my schedule. I want you in my office. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Bring your code." My graduation is tomorrow," I said, my voice a whisper. He looked at me, unfazed. "My apologies. The day after. Then, 9 a.m. Do not be late." He started to turn, then paused. He looked back at my screen, at the little red dots flagging digital ghosts. "And Freya," he said, using my name for the first time. "I want to be very clear. If this system is what I think it is, if it scales, this is not a student project. This is not a prize winner." He looked at me, his gray eyes like forged steel. "This is a backbone. This is the new standard for the entire industry, and Apex Line is going to have it." He turned and walked away. He did not run. He did not look back. He just disappeared into the crowd. Another anonymous man in a dark shirt, leaving me with a $30 monitor and a piece of paper that had just detonated my entire life. I packed up my booth. I did not win the award. It went to the dancing robot. Of course it did. I did not care. I left the convention center and walked to the bus stop. The night was cold. The bus was late. And when it came, it was loud, rattling, and smelled of diesel. I sat in the back. The plastic seat cracked and cold beneath me. I held the small, gray business card in my hand. It was the only thing I had. I thought about my family, right at this moment. They were probably at some cocktail party or charity gala. My father would be talking about portfolios. My mother would be smiling for a photographer. Sienna would be networking. They were in their world, a world of shiny surfaces, important names, and empty gestures. And I was on a $10 night bus, clutching a card from a man who had not seen a Simmons. He had seen an architect. I looked out the window as the industrial parks gave way to the distant, glittering lights of Riverton. If this deal happens, I thought, and my heart was pounding so hard it hurt, if this is real, then for the first time in my entire life, I am going to walk into a room, and I will not be their daughter. I will not be Sienna's sister. I will just be Freya. The Apex Line. Logistics headquarters was not in a high-rise downtown. It was not in a manicured office park. It was a massive, minimalist wedge of concrete and dark glass, pushed up against the side of the interstate highway. The sound of truck traffic was a constant, dull roar in the background. It was not a building designed to impress society. It was a building designed to work. At 8:50 a.m., I walked into the lobby. It was a cavernous space of polished concrete and exposed steel. No art, no beige, just a massive, real-time map of North America on one wall, glowing with thousands of moving lights, each one a truck, a plane, or a ship. "Freya Simmons for Damien Cole," I told the security guard. I was taken to the top floor. The boardroom was a long, narrow space with a floor-to-ceiling window that looked out over the highway, as if the trucks themselves were the only art Damien Cole respected. And the room was full. On one side of the impossibly long black granite table sat a team. There were at least 10 of them, lawyers in sharp suits, their faces impassive, finance specialists, who looked at me with the bored calculation of an actuary, and a group of engineers, their arms crossed, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and pure, unadulterated skepticism. On the other side was a single, empty chair. Damien Cole was at the head of the table, not in a chair, but leaning against the window, drinking coffee from a thick, plain white mug. He just nodded at me. "Freya, sit." I sat. I placed my laptop on the table. I placed the slim gray folder next to it. It felt like I was sitting down to a feast, and I was the main course. A woman in a severe, dark suit, who looked to be the lead counsel, took charge. She did not smile. "Ms. Simmons, thank you for coming. We have had our preliminary engineering team review the code you provided Mr. Cole at the conference." The lead engineer, a man with a graying ponytail, grunted. "The architecture's sound. It is surprisingly clean. As a result," the lawyer continued, "Apex Line is prepared to make a preliminary offer." She slid a document, professionally bound in a blue cover, down the table. It stopped perfectly in front of me. "We find this to be a very generous offer. Considering your status as a student, we are offering a full acquisition of the Sentinel root code, intellectual property, and all associated assets for the sum of $100,000. I looked at the number, $100,000. It was a lot of money. It was more money than I had ever seen. It would pay off my student loans, buy me a new laptop, and a car that worked. It would, in fact, be a life-changing sum of money. And I knew, in that instant, it was a test. This was the trap. This was the moment they found out if I was just a kid playing a computer game, or if I was the architect of their new backbone. I did not open the cover. I left the document on the table. $100,000, I repeated. My voice was quiet, and the room was so silent they all heard it. That is a very generous offer. The lawyer almost smiled. We think so. The problem is, I said, it is the wrong number. The lawyer's non-smile vanished. I am sorry. You are not offering to buy my project, I said, looking not at her, but at Damien, who was still just watching me, his face impassive. You are offering me a finder's fee. You are offering me a promising internship. You are offering to buy me, so I go away. And your team can spend the next year reverse engineering my work. Your offer is not $100,000. Your offer is an insult. The room went from quiet to absolutely, icily silent. One of the finance guys actually scoffed. The lead engineer looked at me like I had just grown a second head. Damien Cole did not move. He just watched. This was my fight. Ms. Simmons, the lawyer said, her voice dropping a few degrees. That is a serious accusation. This is a standard IP acquisition contract. No, I said. It is not. I finally opened my laptop. The screen flared to life. Let's talk about the actual value, not the student project value. Let's talk about the Apex line value. I brought up a window. Your own quarterly report, which is public, states that you lost an estimated $30 million in Q4 last year to logistical inefficiencies. That is a euphemism. That is what you call it when your competitors poach your clients by exploiting data leaks that your own drivers and warehouse managers are selling. The faces of the engineers tightened. They knew. I am not selling you a product, I said. I am selling you a patch for a $30 million a quarter hole, and that is just the fraud you admit to. The real number, from external attacks, is probably closer to 50. I looked at the lawyer. So, no, $100,000 is not the right number. What? Damien Cole's voice cut through the air. Is the right number? This was it. First, I said, we are not discussing an acquisition. We are discussing a partnership. I am not selling Sentinel Root. I am licensing its core, and I am retaining partial IP. The lawyer literally gasped. Absolutely not. Apex Line does not partner on core technology. We acquire. Then you are not acquiring this, I said. Second, I am not an intern. I am not a consultant. I am not a promising anything. You want my system? You get me. I am the director of the Cyber Risk Architecture Division, a division that you will create. I will report directly to Mr. Cole, and I will have full technical oversight. Salary and equity will be commensurate with that title. The room was buzzing now. The finance team was whispering furiously. The lawyers looked outraged. This is unheard of, one of the suits sputtered. She is a student. She has no management experience. You are right, I said, cutting him off. I do not, but you know what I do have? A working solution to the problem your entire $50 million division, I gestured to the skeptical engineers, could not solve. You do not need me to manage people. You need me to build the architecture, and you need to give me the authority to ensure no one on your team screws it up. The lead lawyer held up her hand. This is getting us nowhere. Let's talk about the legal realities. Ms. Simmons, the indemnification clauses alone. I am not interested in the indemnification clauses, I said. I had one more card to play. I took a moment. I needed to be sure. I pulled out my phone, as if to check my notes. I had, in a moment of panic and clarity that morning, emailed the PDF of the offer to Dr. Navarro. Her reply was already there. It was one sentence. Do not sell your future for a number that looks big to a student. I put the phone away. I had all the steel I needed. I opened a second program on my laptop. It was a simulation model. You want to talk reality, counsel? Let's talk reality. The screen showed a new map. This blue line is Apex Line. This red line is your biggest competitor. This is the current flow of high-value contracts. Now, I am going to introduce a simulation of Sentinel Root. I will give it to your competitor. since you are debating the legal realities of acquiring it. I clicked a button. The Red Line's network optimization jumped by 20%. Their fraud loss rate dropped to near zero. And now, I said, I am running a model. At this rate, your competitor, using my system, will be able to underbid you on every major contract up for renewal in the next 6 months. The cost of you not having Sentinel Root is not $30 million a quarter. It is the potential loss of, let's see, the simulation finished, $400 million in revenue by this time next year. I looked at the lawyer. So please, tell me more about the indemnification clauses. She was silent. Damien Cole pushed himself off the window. He walked to the table, picked up the blue-bound offer, and dropped it into a nearby trash can. Everyone, he said, his voice a low growl. Out. The room was in shock. Sir? The lawyer asked. I said, out. His voice was not loud, but it had a quality that made everyone stand up, immediately. The entire team of 10, lawyers, finance, engineers, filed out of the room, their faces a mix of confusion and humiliation. The door clicked shut. It was just me and Damien Cole. The roar of the highway seemed to fill the room. He sat down, not at the head of the table, but in the chair directly opposite me. He leaned forward, his hands clasped. You are not a student, he said, his voice quiet. You are a shark, and this is my ocean. I respect that. He reached into his own folder and pulled out a different document. It was 3 pages, stapled. I had this one drawn up just in case, he said. This is the real offer, the one my team just wasted an hour trying to avoid. He slid it across the granite. We acquire a majority stake, 51%, of Sentinel Root. The remaining 49% is yours, vested in a new corporate entity that we will create and that you will control. The acquisition price for that 51% is $8 million. I stopped breathing. $8 million. You do not go away, he continued, his eyes locked on mine. You come in-house. You are the director of cyber risk architecture, a new division. You get a team. You get a budget. You get full technical veto power on anything related to your system, and you report directly to me. He pointed to the last page. The salary and stock options are on page 3. They are not student level. I read. My hands were shaking, but I forced them to be still. I read every line. He was right. It was all there. The title, the power, the money. It was all real. I read it once. I read it twice. It was almost perfect. One more thing, I said. Damien Cole finally allowed himself a small, dangerous smile. There is always one more thing. What is it? I need a research clause, I said. My title is director. My work is for Apex Line. But this system, I built it in my off hours. It came from my own research. I need to retain the right to conduct independent, non-competing research. On my own time, I will not be consumed by my first success. I need to know I can build the next one. Damien stared at me for a long, hard 10 seconds. I stared back. This was the most important part. This was not about the money. This was about my freedom. He picked up a heavy black pen from the table. You will not drown, he said. You will not have time. He scribbled a note in the margin, initialed it, and then turned to the signature page. He signed his name, Damien Cole. He pushed the pen and the document across the table. Your turn, Director. I picked up the pen. It was heavy. I looked at the line waiting for my name. I thought of the Disownment papers. I thought of my father's signature on a document designed to erase me. I signed my name, Freya Simmons. This was a signature that did not need a cosigner. This was a signature that did not need my parents' approval. This was a signature that bought my past, present, and future, all in one clean stroke. Good, Damien said. Taking the document back, he stood up, I stood up, the deal was done. Now, he said, walking toward the door, about your graduation tomorrow. I was confused. What about it? He paused, his hand on the door. and looked back at me, that small, dangerous smile playing on his lips again. Northbridge Tech invited me to be their commencement speaker this year, he said. I was going to give a boring speech about the future of logistics, but this is much better. He opened the door. How would you feel, Director Simmons, if we announced your new position and our little $8 million deal on stage in front of your entire school? He did not know my family. He did not know what he was really asking. He had no idea he was not just giving me a job. He was giving me my revenge. I had $8 million in my new bank account. Or rather, the first wire transfer of a significant advance had cleared. The full sum was pending the finalization of the corporate entity, but the advance itself was more money than I had ever earned in a lifetime of repairing my mother's friends' laptops. I did not buy a car. I did not buy new clothes. I did not buy jewelry. I used a small fraction of it, less than 1%, to rent an apartment. It was on the 35th floor of the Riverton skyline, a new, sharp-edged building of glass and steel that had ripped a hole in the city's traditional, old money profile. My family hated it. They thought it was garish and cold. I thought it was perfect. My apartment was a small, one-bedroom corner unit. It had no crown molding. It had no dark, heavy drapes. It had no important art. It had polished concrete floors and 2 entire walls of floor-to-ceiling glass. During the day, it was flooded with so much unfiltered sunlight it was almost blinding. At night, it was a data visualization of the entire city. I could see the flow of traffic on the highways, the grid of the streets, the pulse of the infrastructure. It was the opposite of the Simmons mansion, which was designed to keep the world out. My apartment was designed to let it all in. For 3 days, I slept on an air mattress. The only other furniture I bought was for my work. I ordered a 7-foot minimalist steel desk. I ordered one of the best ergonomic chairs money could buy, and I ordered a 48-inch high-resolution curved monitor. The boxes arrived. I did not call anyone to help. I spent an entire afternoon on the concrete floor with an Allen wrench and a set of instructions. I assembled the desk, my hands raw, the smell of metal and packing foam filling the empty space. I tightened the last bolt, set the monitor on its stand, and plugged in my laptop. I booted up the Sentinel root kernel. I watched my code, my map, my data, fill that massive screen. This was not a computer game. This was not a hobby. This was my new headquarters. This was the first piece of my life I had ever truly built. During this entire process, the move, the new bank account, the lease, my family was silent. I had simply vanished from their immediate orbit. I had not been home. I had not answered their calls. Not that there were many. The only communication I received was a single, cold email from my mother. Subject: graduation. Urgent. Freya, I have not heard back from you regarding the gown selection for the photographer. I have told him our family concept is spring pastels, and Sienna has confirmed pale blue. You were assigned pale lilac. You must confirm you have ordered the lilac gown by tomorrow at noon, or you will ruin the visual consistency of the family portraits. This is the last time I will ask. I looked at the email. Visual consistency. I looked at my 48-inch monitor, which was currently tracking a simulated cyber attack on a shipping depot in Long Beach. I typed one word, confirmed, and hit send. I did not care what color I was wearing. It was a costume for a play that was about to end. While I was assembling my new life, screw by screw, my old life was busy plotting my obsolescence. Across town, in the Northcrest Hills mansion, my family was holding a strategy dinner. I knew the shape of these dinners. They were not for celebration. They were for containment. Thomas and Margot sat at the head of the dark, imposing mahogany table. Sienna was there, of course, looking sharp and predatory, and at the other end was Mr. Bancroft, the family's trusted corporate lawyer, a man who had made a fortune restructuring the less palatable assets of Riverton's elite. The situation is untenable, Thomas was saying, swirling his wine. I did not need to be there to hear the words. I had his algorithm memorized. She is graduating. She will no longer be a student. She will be a variable, an unmanaged liability. She has been distant, Margot added, her voice tight with social anxiety. She is non-responsive. What if she does something embarrassing? What if she tries to use the Simmons name for one of her ridiculous little computer projects? That, Thomas said, is precisely what we are here to prevent. We need to reset her expectations. We need to formalize the separation. Bancroft, I imagined, would clear his throat. Thomas, you are correct. A formalization is wise. As she is over 21 and graduating, your legal financial obligations are, for all intents and purposes, concluded. However, a clean break is always best. A simple document, a declaration of financial independence. It ensures there is no confusion. It is, as you say, a restructuring of your personal portfolio. She will never sign it, Margot said. She is stubborn. She will make a scene. This is where Sienna would lean forward, her eyes bright. Oh, she will. We just have to present it correctly. We have to make her the one who refuses us. She would lay out her plan, a masterpiece of domestic cruelty. I will do it. I will draft an offer letter, an act of generosity, from my firm. We will offer her an internship. A legal internship? Thomas would ask, intrigued. Good heavens, no, Sienna would laugh. A mailroom internship, sorting packages, delivering files, a foot in the door. We will call it something to build her character and teach her professionalism while she decides on a real career. The beauty of the plan, she would explain, was in the inevitable refusal. She will, of course, be insulted. Her ego is too big. She will refuse my generous offer, and that, Sienna would say, looking from Thomas to Margot, is when you present the document not as a punishment, but as a sad, logical consequence. You tell the world, she would continue, we tried. We offered her a golden opportunity at one of the city's top law firms, but she refused. She does not want to work. She does not appreciate our help. You are not disowning her. You are simply accepting her decision to walk away. Thomas would nod, a slow, appraising look on his face. He was not seeing a daughter. He was seeing a brilliant, hostile takeover strategy. It is clean, he would say. It protects the narrative. Bancroft would agree to have the document drawn up, notarized, and ready for signing. I, of course, knew none of the specifics, but I knew them. I knew they were planning something. I knew their behavior. I had logged the data for 22 years. Their silence was not acceptance, it was preparation. But I was not focused on their next move. I was focused on mine. I was spending 12 hours a day in my new apartment, not just running Sentinel Route, but reading every onboarding document Apex Line sent me. I was studying their corporate structure, their existing security protocols, their legal frameworks. I was not just going to be the director in name. I was going to be the one who knew their system better than they did. From day one. My new company phone, a sleek, encrypted device, buzzed. It was an email from Damien. Subject: Commencement Speech. The body of the email was short. Director Simmons, attached is a draft of the speech. Your section is on slide 14. Please review. I do not like surprises. I opened the attachment. It was a standard, corporate-looking PowerPoint. I clicked to slide 14. There was no photo of me. There was just a title, centered on the screen, over a schematic of a data network. It read, The Invisible Architect. He saw me. He saw the one thing my family had spent my entire life refusing to acknowledge. I was the one who built things in the dark. I was the one who had been invisible, and he was about to put a spotlight on me. Another package arrived. It was not from Amazon. It was a simple, stiff manila envelope with a university insignia. Inside, there was no form letter. There was a single, thick, cream-colored card, folded once. The handwriting inside was small, sharp, and precise. It was from Dr. Navarro. Freya. Tomorrow at your graduation, you will hear two kinds of applause. The first is loud, immediate, and superficial. It is for the gowns, the photos, the names being read. It is for the idea of achievement. It is meaningless. The second is quiet. It is the sound of respect from people who actually know what you did. It is the sound of a problem being solved. It is the applause of the system itself when a bug is fixed. The first one is what your family wants. Always choose the second. I kept her card, placing it on my new, empty desk. It was the only personal item in the entire apartment. I was reading a technical manual on Apex Line's server architecture when my personal phone buzzed on the concrete floor. I had almost forgotten about it. I picked it up. It was a text message. From Margot. Freya, I am booking a table for lunch tomorrow. 1 p.m. Auberge Laurent. You, me, your father, and Sienna. This is not optional. You must be on time. You must dress appropriately. The message ended with a new, chilling finality. We need to talk about your future. I looked at the text message, the glowing blue bubble of their demand. Then I looked across my empty apartment to my desk. The gray, multi-million-dollar Apex Line contract sat in a neat folder, right next to Dr. Navarro's card. I smiled, a small, cold, digital smile. Whose future? I whispered to the empty, sunlit room, Auberge Laurent. For the second time in less than 24 hours, my mother, of course, had chosen it again. It was her preferred stage for high-stakes social theater, a place where the suffocating silence and the judgment of the other patrons did all the heavy lifting for her. The lighting at lunch was brighter than at dinner, more clinical, less forgiving. The same starched white tablecloths, the same heavy ornate silver, the same muted clinking of glasses from the other tables, where the elite of Riverton were performing their own matinees. And there we were, at the center table. The spotlight was on. Sienna sat opposite me, next to Father. She was wearing a razor-sharp, dark gray business suit that probably cost more than my last 6 months of rent. She looked less like a lawyer and more like a caricature of a junior partner. All predatory ambition and expensive tailoring. She was already fussing with her phone, propping it against the embossed breadbasket, pretending to check her reflection in the dark screen. I saw the small red icon of the video application. She was setting her angle, ready to capture the execution. My father, Thomas, looked impatient, as if this was an unpleasant board meeting he was obligated to attend. He had already checked his Patek Philippe twice. My mother, Margot, was radiating a brittle, theatrical anxiety, a mother hen about to perform a necessary, painful culling of the flock for the greater good. Thomas began before the waiter had even finished pouring my water. He did not waste time on pleasantries. His business was time. Freya, he started, his voice flat, the same one he used for discussing underperforming assets. We are here to discuss your future, a practical future. He motioned with his chin toward Sienna, who sat up a little straighter, basking in the gesture. Sienna has a clear path. She is an asset to her firm and a credit to this family. Her trajectory is defined. It is successful, and most importantly, it is visible. It is understandable. We know what she does. His gaze, clear and cold, shifted to me. Your path, on the other hand, is ambiguous. He said the word like it was a disease. This fascination you have with computers, this startup mentality, it is a black box. No one understands what you do. It is opaque. It is messy. And frankly, it is not befitting the Simmons name. It lacks prestige. Sienna took this as her cue. She leaned forward, her voice dripping with a sickening, false sympathy that she probably practiced in the mirror. Which is why I have done something for you, Freya. I pulled some major strings. She slid a single, crisp piece of paper across the table. It was on her firm's heavy, cream-colored letterhead. I managed to get you a golden opportunity. They have agreed, as a favor to me, to offer you an internship. Margot beamed, her face flooding with practiced relief. Is not that wonderful, darling? A real job. Working with your sister. Sienna's smile was all teeth. "It is in the mail room, of course, sorting packages, handling the copy machines, fetching coffee, but it is a foot in the door." She leaned in, her voice dropping, ensuring her phone's microphone would catch it. "It will teach you discipline. It will teach you what a real, professional environment looks like, instead of whatever it is you do in those dark rooms with machines. It is a chance to finally start over, properly." The trap was set. The insult was delivered, disguised as generosity. I looked at the letter. I did not touch it. I let it sit there, an absurd little white flag of their profound condescension. I looked at Sienna. I looked at my father. I looked at my mother. I let the silence stretch, just long enough for it to become uncomfortable for them. Then I asked the only question that mattered. My voice was very quiet, very calm. "What if I refuse?" The question hit the table like a dropped glass. Margot's face froze. She had not expected this part of the script, but Thomas had. He was prepared for this contingency. He had run the models. He leaned forward, dropping his voice into the low, non-negotiable tone of a final judgment. "Then we are forced to act," he said. "If you refuse this generous support, if you choose to continue on this reckless, immature path, then we must formally protect the family. We must protect our reputation from your choices." Margot, recovering her role, reached into her expensive, structured leather handbag. She pulled out the other envelope, the thick, cream-colored one. It was identical to the gift from last night, but this one was fresh, sealed, and bearing the embossed stamp of Bancroft, their corporate lawyer. She placed it in front of me, on top of Sienna's mailroom offer. Her hand was trembling slightly, a beautiful, small detail of her performance, but her voice was firm, rehearsed. "This, Freya, is a necessary step," she said, her eyes pleading for some invisible audience. "To ensure both parties are free, to sever the bindings that are clearly causing you so much confusion. It is a gift, really, the gift of freedom, no more expectations." Sienna's eyes were wide, shining with the thrill of the kill. Her phone was perfectly angled. "Go on, Freya," she whispered, her voice a loud, theatrical hiss. Read it aloud. Let us hear it." She was desperate for the breakdown. She wanted the tears, the accusations, the raw, viral clip-worthy explosion of the ungrateful child. I picked up the envelope. It was heavy, expensive paper. I broke the lawyer's seal with my thumbnail. I pulled out the document. Declaration of Familial Obligation Severance. I scanned the legalese. It was not a dramatic, emotional plea. It was a contract. It stated that I, Freya Simmons, by refusing the family's reasonable offers of support and career guidance, was now operating as an independent entity. It declared that the Simmons family would no longer be held liable, financially or reputationally, for any of my actions, debts, or ventures. It was not a disownment. It was a press release, drafted by a lawyer, designed to be shown to their friends at the country club as proof of what a difficult, ungrateful daughter I was. I looked at the date. It was prepared 2 weeks ago. I looked at the notary stamp and the crisp, blue signatures of Thomas and Margot Simmons at the bottom. It was all pre-signed. They had just been waiting for the right moment, the right performance, to deploy it. This lunch, my graduation, it was all just staging. "Read it, Freya," Sienna insisted, her voice tighter now. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I simply calmly folded the document in half, and then in half again. I placed it on the table. Then I reached into my bag, the simple canvas bag that had been sitting at my feet. I pulled out my own folder. It was plain, gray, recycled cardboard. It was not leather-bound. It was not cream-colored. It was thick. It was heavy with paper. I placed it on the table. The sound it made, a solid, heavy, definitive thud, was not a sound that belonged in Auberge Laurent. It was a sound of work, of weight. It was so loud in the quiet room that a man at a nearby table actually looked over. The thud of that folder, in 1 second, broke their entire performance. Thomas stared at it. His entire posture changed. The mask of the concerned father fell away, replaced by the wary, sharp-eyed look of a financial advisor who thinks his client is hiding an asset. "What is that?" he demanded. His voice was no longer paternal. It was sharp. Sienna had stopped recording. Her phone was still clutched in her hand, but her focus was broken. She looked from my face to the gray folder, her brow furrowed in genuine, unprepared confusion. I smiled. It was a small, light smile. It did not touch my eyes. "Just some paperwork, Father, about my future." I tapped the gray folder. "This one." I pushed their cream-colored envelope back toward him. "Not that one." "What are you talking about?" he snapped. "You probably do not want to read it today," I said, my voice still light, conversational. "It is a lot of technical jargon. You would find it ambiguous." I used his own word. "But do not worry. It will all be in the press tomorrow. You can read it then. It will be much clearer." "The press?" Margot's voice was a sharp squeak. She was losing control of the narrative, and it terrified her. She looked around, her eyes wide, suddenly remembering we were in a full restaurant. "Freya, this is not a joke. You will not threaten your family in the middle of Auberge Laurent." "I am not threatening. Mother," I said. I looked at her, then at Thomas. My voice was calm and clear. I am just giving you what you always wanted, a choice. You can either trust me, right now, for the first time in my life," I paused, "or you can just wait and let the 6 o'clock news tell you." Sienna's hand slowly lowered, her phone's screen going black. She was no longer a producer. She was just confused. The script had been flipped so fast she had whiplash. She was sensing a new power, a new system in the room that she was not a part of, and it was bigger than hers. I stood up. I smoothed my simple, undesigner dress. I left their cream-colored envelope, their gift, sitting on the table, next to Sienna's untouched mailroom offer. I picked up my gray folder, the Apex Line contract, the $8 million deal. The weight of it was real. I looked at the three of them. They were staring at me, their faces a perfect, frozen tableau of confusion and dawning, unfamiliar panic. "Thank you, Mother, Father," I said. My voice was clear and carried in the quiet room. "Thank you for this lunch, and thank you for the gift." I tapped their envelope. "You wanted to release me from the burden of being a Simmons. You wanted to free me from the role of the daughter who must make the family look good." I held up my gray folder. "Consider it done. From now on, I only have to worry about making my data look good." I turned and walked away. I did not look back. I could feel their eyes, and the eyes of the entire restaurant, on my back. But for the first time, I did not care. I was not walking away as their daughter. I was walking away as me. The Northbridge Tech Stadium was a massive, concrete bowl of sound, baked in the late May California sun. The air was thick with the smell of hot asphalt, sunscreen, and the faint, sweet-sour tang of cheap celebratory champagne. Pomp and circumstance blared from an overtaxed speaker system, a repetitive, grinding loop that set my teeth on edge. Down on the field, thousands of us sat in a sea of identical, dark blue polyester, a sea of anonymity. But not everyone was anonymous. I scanned the stands until I found them. Section 104, the VIP, friends and family enclosure, and there, in the front row, sat the Simmons family, perfectly staged. My father, Thomas, was in a crisp linen suit, looking less like a proud parent and more like a man inspecting a potential acquisition. My mother, Margot, was fanning herself with a program, her press smile firmly affixed, her eyes scanning the crowd for anyone important. And Sienna was beside her, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless, already checking the lighting for the inevitable post-ceremony photo shoot. Margot was actively adjusting Sienna's hair, smoothing a non-existent flyaway. They were a tableau of parental pride, directed entirely at their one, perfect, photogenic asset. I was sitting 20 rows down, in the middle of the S section, just another blue gown, just another data point in the crowd. They had not texted, they had not called, they had no idea where I was, and I knew they did not care. My only function today was to show up in the correct pale lilac gown, their designated color for me, the one that would not clash with Sienna's blue, in time for the family portrait. My presence was a matter of visual consistency. The speeches droned on, the dean, a student body president. My mind was elsewhere, running simulations. Would Damien actually do it? Or was it just a figure of speech? The dean stepped to the podium. And now, it is my great honor to introduce our commencement speaker, a true titan of American industry, a visionary who is single-handedly changing the way this country moves, the CEO and president of Apex Line Logistics. Please welcome Mr. Damien Cole. There was a polite, appreciative applause. In the VIP section, I saw my father sit up straighter. He clapped, his hands hitting with a sharp, appreciative smack. He knew the name. This was not some boring academic. This was a somebody. This was a name he respected. He glanced at Margot and nodded, impressed. This was a speaker worthy of his time. He had no idea. Damien Cole walked to the podium. He was not in a gown. He was wearing a simple, dark suit and a plain gray tie. He looked exactly as he had in the boardroom. Functional, no nonsense, and utterly unimposing. He adjusted the microphone, and a low, raspy voice silenced the entire stadium. "Thank you, Dean," he said. He did not smile. "I am supposed to be here today to give you a speech about the future, to tell you to follow your dreams, to give you 5 tips for success." He paused, looking out at us. "I am not going to do that. It is a waste of your time. Instead, I want to talk about someone who is already building the future, right now." The stadium was quiet. This was not the standard script. "We have a myth in this country that innovation comes from massive $100 million research labs," he continued. "But sometimes it comes from a single person, a person working a night shift at a 24-hour coffee shop to pay their rent." My heart did not just pound. It stalled. It seized in my chest. Oh God. "Sometimes," he went on, his voice a low, intense growl, "it comes from a student who spends their nights living on tips from truckers, and then spends their days building a system to protect those very same truckers from the kind of cyber attacks that could cost them their livelihood. A system to protect billions of dollars in national infrastructure." In the VIP section, Thomas and Margot were listening politely. It was a nice story, a good, abstract piece of inspiration for the kids. Sienna, I could see, had already pulled out her phone. She was probably checking her Instagram likes. "We are trained to look for talent in the obvious places," Damien said, and his voice got sharper. "We look for it in the top law firms. We look for it in the right families. We look for it in the people who look good in a photograph." He paused. "But sometimes, the most disruptive, the most important talent comes from the places we are trained to ignore. It comes from the tinkerers, the quiet ones, the people that, sometimes, even their own families have failed to see." A low, appreciative laugh rippled through the student section. It was a good line. Down in section 104, my family did not react. The line, the truth of it, was so far outside their comprehension that it flew right over their heads. Damien Cole leaned closer to the microphone. "This is not an abstract story, and I am not just here today as your speaker. I am here as a recruiter." He looked down, not at the crowd, but at the front row of graduates. "Today, I am incredibly proud, and personally very relieved, to announce that Apex Line Logistics has just finalized a strategic, multi-million-dollar deal to acquire a new, revolutionary security architecture from one of your own graduating students." The entire stadium went silent. The air crackled. You could hear the hum of the giant LED screens. This was not in the program. Damien held up a single piece of paper, the press release. "It is therefore my honor," he said, his voice now booming, amplified to fill the entire bowl. to be the first to congratulate the new and youngest ever Director of Cyber Risk Architecture for Apex Line Logistics, Ms. Freya Simmons. The sound that followed was not applause, it was a detonation. The students around me, who had no idea who I was, erupted in a confused, ecstatic roar. In the same instant, the giant jumbotron screens on either side of the stage, which had been focused on Damien, switched. My name, Freya Simmons, exploded in white, 50-foot-high letters on the main LED screen behind the stage, and underneath it, the title, Student Architect Behind Multi-Million Security Deal. The main camera operator was panning frantically across the sea of blue, searching. Where is Freya Simmons? And then a smaller, secondary camera, the one trained on the VIP section, the one meant to capture proud parent moments, found my family. It found them, and the live feed filled the screen. Thomas did not stand. He jerked, as if he had been shot, lurching to his feet in a single, violent, involuntary motion. His face was not proud. It was not happy. It was a mask of pure, blood-drained, ashen horror. His eyes were wide, fixed on the screen, on the words, multi-million security deal. He looked like a man who had just watched his entire life's portfolio go up in flames. Margot. Her hand flew to her mouth, her pressed smile shattering like glass, leaving a slack-jawed, grotesque O of disbelief. Her carefully constructed world was atomizing in front of 10,000 people. And Sienna. Her phone clattered from her limp hand, bouncing onto the concrete steps. She was staring at the screen, her perfect, beautiful face contorted into an ugly, unrecognizable mask of pure, seething disbelief. I could read her lips. No, 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 it is not possible. No. The screen behind Damien updated. The line multi-million security deal flashed and was replaced. Apex Line signs $8 million deal. The number, the specific, brutal, 8-figure number, the number that made their entire world, their entire system of value, look like a rounding error, the number that their disownment papers, signed and notarized, were supposed to protect them from ever having to acknowledge. A faculty marshal was suddenly at the end of my row. Freya Simmons? Are you Freya Simmons? I stood up. My knees were water. The students around me scrambled to their feet, parting, staring at me with a new, strange awe. The camera found me. My face, stunned and pale in my lilac gown, filled the jumbotron. I walked down the aisle. I walked out of the anonymous blue sea. I walked up the steps to the stage. The applause was a physical, deafening wall of sound. I walked across the stage, my polyester gown rustling. I reached Damien Cole. He was smiling, a real, genuine smile. He did not just shake my hand. In front of 10,000 people and my horrified family, he pulled me into a brief, firm, respectful one-armed hug. He handed me the symbolic diploma tube with one hand, and with the other, he handed me a second envelope, a plain gray Apex Line envelope. He turned back to the microphone, his hand resting on my shoulder, a gesture of ownership, of alliance. Talent like Freya, he boomed, his voice echoing across the stadium, is a reminder to all of us, sometimes, the people who are dismissed the most, the ones who are told they're just playing games, are the only ones building the systems that will keep all of us safe. The crowd roared again. The main camera stayed on us, but the VIP camera, it stayed on them. It captured the moment for eternity. Thomas, desperately trying to force his face into a mask of pride, but it just looked like a grimace of profound pain. Margot, who had managed to start clapping, a robotic, terrifying motion, her eyes dead. Sienna, who was just frozen, her knuckles white on the armrest, staring at me with a look of jealousy so pure it was almost radioactive. I stood there, on the stage, the heavy gray envelope in my hand. I looked down, over the thousands of heads, past the lights, and into the small, shaded VIP section. I saw my family. For 22 years, I had been the error in their code, the unphotogenic daughter, the invisible girl. But from up here, from this height, the perspective had finally, irrevocably, shifted. From up here, they were the ones who were small. They were the ones who were blurred, indistinct, and trapped in their seats. They were just three faces in a crowd, watching me. They were not the authors. They were not the main characters. They were just the audience, stuck in their seats, in a story that was, finally, mine. The backstage area was chaos, a compressed, humid tunnel of excited students in polyester gowns, crying parents, and the pop of flashbulbs. The air was thick with relief and cheap perfume. I was trying to navigate my way out, my diploma tube in one hand and the heavy gray Apex line envelope in the other, when I heard her voice. Freya, darling!" It was Margot. She and Thomas were shouldering their way through the crowd, their faces a grotesque, frantic pantomime of parental pride. They were running. I had never seen my father run for anything other than a squash ball. Margot reached me first. She grabbed me, pulling me into a suffocating, theatrical hug. Her perfume was overwhelming. "Oh, my baby, she cried, her voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I knew it. I always knew it. I told your father. Did not I tell him? Our Freya is going to do something special." Her eyes were not on me. They were on the student newspaper photographer who was snapping pictures nearby. She was angling my head, trying to get us both in the shot. Thomas was right behind her, his face pale and slick with a sweat that was not just from the heat. He was clutching something in his hand. The cream-colored envelope, the Disownment papers. It was crumpled now. The edges softened from his panicked grip. "Freya," he said, his voice a low, urgent rasp. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. That was quite the surprise. A real home run. He was trying to use sports metaphors, trying to sound like a normal, proud father. He just sounded terrified. "About that document," he said, his eyes darting around. He waved the crumpled envelope, as if to dismiss it. "That little joke from yesterday, that was just a test, a motivational tactic, to challenge your spirit." He forced a wider, more painful smile. "We will tear this up immediately. Of course, it is just a misunderstanding, a family joke." I did not move. I did not smile. I just let Margot's arms fall away from me. I looked at my father. I looked at the crumpled, pathetic joke in his hand. Then, I reached into the deep pocket of my own gown. My hand was steady. I pulled out my own copy, the one I had made last night. It was pristine, flat, uncreased. I held it out to him. "No need." "Father," I said. My voice was calm and clear, cutting through the backstage noise. "You do not have to destroy it. I am keeping my copy." Thomas's smile vanished. What do you mean?" "I am keeping it as a data point," I said. "A historical record. Yesterday, at 1:15 p.m., you and Mother signed this document. It is a fact. It is a piece of data. Today, at 3:30 p.m., I tapped the gray Apex line envelope in my other hand. "I signed this one. That is also a fact. They are both true. I like having true things." His face went from pale to gray. "Freya!" Sienna was suddenly there, pushing her way through. Her face was a toxic, complex mess of rage, envy, and a new, horrible, fawning desperation. "Freya, oh my God, I cannot believe you." She tried to loop her arm through mine, a sisterly gesture we had never, not once, performed. "Why did you not tell me?" she hissed, her voice a mix of a whine and a scold. "Why did you not say it was Apex Line? I just wanted to help you. If I had known, I could have negotiated for you. I could have advised you. That mailroom job, that was just a joke, a sisterly tease. I could have gotten you a real legal consultation. They probably cheated you. This was, perhaps, the most extraordinary pivot of all. She was trying to reframe my success as her own missed opportunity to control it. I extracted my arm from hers, gently. "Thank you, Sienna," I said, and my voice was cold, polished steel. "But I think I did okay on my own." I looked her dead in the eyes. "I got exactly what I wanted, and I did not need a lawyer to protect the Simmons family name. I needed one to protect me, so I got one. Damien's. They're better than yours." "Nauka, Freya," Thomas interrupted, his voice suddenly shifting. The terrified father was gone. The financial advisor was back. This was a negotiation, and he was losing. It was time for a new tactic. "Let's not be hasty. This is a wonderful opportunity. For you and for the family." He was already restructuring the portfolio in his head. "We should harness this, synergize your technical skills, and the Simmons name, my connections, your mother's social reach. We could help you. We could advise you on the new board. We could help you manage this windfall. We can make it even bigger, a joint venture." I looked at him. He was not my father. He was a parasite. He was trying to attach himself to his new host. "No," I said. It was a single, flat, digital word. "No," he repeated, baffled. "No. The only deal I care about has already been signed," I said, holding up the gray envelope. "And there are no clauses in it for family support. There are no joint ventures. There is just me and my work. I do not need your connections, and I do not want your name." "Freya," Margot's voice broke. This was her last, desperate play, the emotional one. Real, unphotogenic tears were welling in her eyes. "Freya, please, what will I tell people? What will I say about that paper?" She gestured at the disownment document in my hand. "Please, just let me tell our friends it was a misunderstanding, a terrible joke." She was not asking me to forgive her. She was not apologizing. She was asking for permission to lie. She was asking me to help her manage the brand dilution. I looked at her, the woman who had been horrified by my bloody knee, not because I was hurt, but because the silk dress was at risk. "Mother," I said, and my voice was not even cold anymore. It was just tired. "You can tell your friends whatever story you want. You always have. It is your specialty. But from now on, I will only be telling the truth. Director Simmons." The voice that cut through the scene was not mine. It was Damien Cole's. He was standing right behind me, a small, severe-looking PR team flanking him. He had not heard the conversation, but he had seen the tableau. He looked at my family, his eyes flat, assessing. He did not know them. He did not know who they were. To him, they were just noise, just three well-dressed emotional strangers impeding his new hire. The way he said Director Simmons, it was like a shot of adrenaline. It made my family physically flinch. "The car is ready," Damien said to me, ignoring them completely. "The Wall Street Journal team is on a conference line for your official first take. We need to go." This was it, the exit. I turned back to my family. One last time. They were frozen, defeated. Their play was over. Their lines were gone, and the audience had left. "Father," I said. I held out the crumpled, cream-colored envelope. "Theirs. You keep this. It is your copy." I did not let him take it. I just dropped it. It fluttered, landing on the floor between us, a pathetic, discarded piece of their old narrative. "You gave me a graduation present," I said, my voice finally, utterly calm. "You gave me the right to live my life with no attachments to your expectations, the right to be free of the Simmons brand." I held up my heavy gray folder, my contract. "And I am giving you a gift in return," I said. "A daughter who no longer has to pretend to be grateful for a life she never wanted." I turned. I did not say goodbye. I walked past Damien, toward the exit. He fell into step beside me, his PR team forming a small, efficient wedge around us. Was that a problem? He asked, his voice low. No, I said. It was a system cleanup, a final data migration. We burst through the double doors, out of the dark, humid backstage tunnel, and into the bright, blinding light of the afternoon. A black, sleek sedan was waiting. Not a flashy limousine, a functional, private, Apex line car. As I walked toward it, I looked back. One last time. Through the doors, I could see them. A portrait. Margot, standing, her hand over her mouth, completely still. Thomas, bent over, as if in pain, staring at the envelope on the floor. And Sienna. Sienna was just watching me. Her face a perfect, empty mask of everything she had just lost. I got in the car. Damien got in the other side. Before the door closed, I looked up at the sky over Riverton. A clear, digital, cloudless blue. They signed papers to write me out of their story. I signed papers to write my own. The heavy door clicked shut, sealing out the noise of the stadium, the shouts, the music. The car started to move, the engine a low, powerful, silent hum. The story was over. The work was just beginning. If you have ever been made to feel invisible by your own family, if you have ever been told your passion is just a game, remember this. Sometimes, the loudest, most powerful, most valuable sound in the world is not an explosion. It is the quiet, perfect, precise click of a pen, signing the contract that you wrote for your own damn life. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where in the world you are listening from right now. Please drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's connect. Make sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories and like this video. And if you want to help this story reach more people who need to hear it, please hit that hype button to show your support.